Shalom, everybody. Good afternoon, shalom, kia ora tātou, talofa lava, and thank you for coming on this typically glorious Wellington afternoon to the commemoration of United Nations International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'd like to acknowledge that this Jewish urupa here stands on land associated with the Port Nicholson Block Settlement Trust and the Mana Whenua Taranaki Whaanui ki te upoko o te ika. A special welcome to the members of Parliament here today, to their excellencies the members of the Diplomatic Corps, to the Chief Human Rights Commissioner Paul Hunt, to members of Parliament and former members, to faith leaders and those engaged in interfaith activities, to the Deputy Mayor of Wellington, Jewel Day, and other leaders of local councils in the region, to Robin Baker, the Chair of the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, to our honoured and cherished Holocaust survivors and all other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and mokopuna. The New Zealand Jewish community, which quite often feels threatened by anti-Jewish expressions in one form or another, also feels supported by the number of people here and who are attending similar public commemorations in Auckland, Hamilton and Christchurch. But this commemoration is not just a Jewish one, not only a Jewish event. We know this because it takes place on a day designated by the United Nations, and it's co-sponsored in New Zealand by UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisations, and also by the Human Rights Commission and the Wellington City Council. Remembering the Holocaust is universally acknowledged as a way of reminding ourselves of what horrors human beings are capable of perpetrating. Unfortunately, similar genocides have been carried out since the Holocaust during the last 75 years, in Bangladesh, in Cambodia, against the Iraqi Kurds, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Darfur, in Myanmar. It's a grim list. But we remember them because we want to avoid similar things happening in the future. And that means happening to anyone, because we know and remember that Holocaust victims included Roma and Sinti people, commonly known as gypsies, homosexuals and disabled people, and others because of their ethnicity or their political views. The strong theme of our remembrance today, and you will have noticed, I hope, from the programme, is the righteous among the nations. Those non-Jewish people who risked their own lives to save Jews from extermination. There are about 27,000 from 51 different countries who are recognized as righteous by Yad Vashem, the Remembrance Center in Jerusalem, and we want to remember them today as outstanding individuals. By their examples, they send us a message today that we should all aim to be upstanders, not bystanders, speaking out when we see injustice, discrimination or bullying will help stem the spread of situations similar to those which led to the Shoah, to the Holocaust. Standing by silently is never the right choice. We open the commemoration with the lighting of a memorial candle, and they will illuminate the candle which is standing next to the Holocaust Memorial. And in every world faith, the candle, and the light of the candle, is a symbol of purity and an expression of hope. will now ask everybody to stand for a minute's silence to remember those who perished during the Holocaust, the Shoah. Thank you. The first speaker this afternoon is the Deputy Mayor, Jill Day, of Wellington City, and I would like to ask her to come forward to speak, but mention also at the same time how thankful the Jewish community is for the support that Wellington City Council has given over many years, in fact almost since the beginning of us holding this commemoration, and we find this very supportive and very kind of the Council to do that. Jill Day.
Tēnā koutou katoa, shalom, and good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here to represent Wellington City Council on behalf of Mayor Justin Lester. When I was talking in the Mayor's office yesterday about coming, Joseph offered to give me a ride with a bit of a cheeky smile, and I said I think I can get myself there. For those of you who will know, a few years ago Justin nearly didn't make it home after being here, so it's a bit of a joke around the office. I would firstly like to do some acknowledgements, and I really wish to acknowledge those here today who are the Holocaust survivors. And I would like to acknowledge and thank the MC, David Swartz, and Mrs. Inga Wolf, who is the Director of the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand and also a Holocaust survivor. I'd like to acknowledge Rabbi Ariel Tal from Wellington Jewish Community Centre, Harvey Lifshitz from the Wellington Progressive Jewish Congregation, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, especially Ambassador Gerberg of Israel and Ambassador Thiedman of Germany and Ambassador Marcelli of Italy, who will be speaking soon. I'd also like to acknowledge our MPs, Nicola Willis and Brett Hudson from Parliament, and I'd like to acknowledge my City Councillor colleague Simon Wolfe. It's good to have you here. I know that you're always here and very much part of it, and also there's some ex-Wellington City Councillors here as well, Ian McKinnon, Helen Ritchie and Ruth Gottlieb. It's good to see you here supporting. So today we are gathered here in this sacred place for a very important reason: to honour and remember the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. We are also here to ensure that we do everything in our power to ensure nothing like this happens again. And as David has already mentioned, the theme of this year's focus on the righteous among the nations and those approximately 27,000 people who were rescuers of Jews and others during the Holocaust. These were the people who refused to stand by and watch their friends, family, neighbours and strangers be led to the slaughter. Sadly, far too few were saved. It is heartening that in the face of others turning away, there are stories of people holding on to their care for their fellow man. For example, the kinder transport of children to Britain and the rescue of most of the Danish population to Sweden in 1943. Also, the Holocaust Centre tells the story of the orphans who were brought to New Zealand from Poland by Annie and Max Dexton, an amazing piece of local Berhampore history. In Wellington, we take pride in our tolerance and acceptance of others. We are one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and yet we live in peace. Not many countries can say that. In Wellington, we don't just tolerate diversity, we celebrate it. We embrace our difference. This is an important message for everyone here today, and especially for our tamariki and mokopuna, our future generations. A message that we will fight for a world without racism and hatred. We will teach our children to stand up and speak out, not to be silent or a bystander, to fight against racism, religious intolerance and homophobia. This Remembrance Day gives us the opportunity to reflect on the lesson that even the smallest act of prejudice can begin the process of allowing hatred to flourish, but equally that the smallest amount of kindness, tolerance, understanding, courage and love should not be regarded as extraordinary traits, but one we should embrace and live by in our daily lives. We cannot be bystanders. We must aim to be upstanders like the righteous among the nations. They showed us the way. The Holocaust Centre does an incredible job in educating the community in this very thing. Thank you for the work you do. It is very much appreciated. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Jill, especially for your strong reference to the need for education. And we have always felt that the Wellington City Council supports the Holocaust Centre in that mission. Our next speaker is the Ambassador for Italy, His Excellency Fabrizio Marcelli. And I would like to thank him particularly for an event which he organised and promoted last October, and that was to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the roundup of the Jews of the ghetto of Rome. And it, as well as the events of that evening, which involved speakers and music, there was a publication which is quite groundbreaking. It's a comic book, in fact, in style, about that whole unfortunate event. And so we are very happy to have His Excellency as a speaker this afternoon and thank him for what he has already done for the Jewish community. His Excellency.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Mayor, members of Parliament, leaders of the religious faiths, colleagues of the diplomatic corps, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand and Wellington's Regional Jewish Council for asking me to intervene in this commemoration. I'm honoured to be speaking today as representative of the country chairing at present the International Alliance for Holocaust Remembrance. Memory should be of paramount importance for any country that considers itself democratic. Memory of what has been, why and under which circumstances the unspeakable happened. There is no denying that the Italian government of the time was an accomplice to the most aberrant crime in the history of humankind, the Shoah. Now, the passage of time is endangering one of the most enriching voices of our respective national consciences. The survivors of that collective folly in Europe that led to the Holocaust are dwindling. Nowadays, most people don't know that the Holocaust occurred or believe it was exaggerated. Theories of a conspiracy deny the murder of millions and pretend that the undeniable facts were instead fabricated. We can only oppose to historical negationism our commitment to preserve and bequeath the memory. Actions like today's observance of Remembrance Day are therefore not just formal commemorative ceremonies, but key initiatives for the safeguard of memory. One of the witnesses of the Shoah was Primo Levi, an Italian Jew who fought with resistance, was arrested and deported to Auschwitz, where he spent 1 year until liberation. His fresh memories of that ordeal were described in his novel, If This Is a Man, published in 1947. He is unanimously recognized as one of the most influential Italian intellectuals of the 20th century. Word and memory are essential tools that Primo Levi employed to remember his passage through deportation and detention in Auschwitz and narrate what is not even possible to imagine, to see and experience a situation of dread and horror, waiting for a deportation order, traveling in a cattle cart, by train, descending a ramp for selection, imagining what it must be like to know you're about to be gassed and cremated, struggling for survival, surrounded by people you love and hate. He wrote in the preface to the first German edition of If This Is a Man, I do not comprehend, I cannot tolerate that a man be judged not for what he is, but for the group into which he happens to belong. His warnings are clear. Many people, many nations, can find themselves holding, more or less wittingly, that every stranger is an enemy. This is a currently relevant and universal admonishment. For the 100th anniversary of Primo Levi's birth, the Italian Embassy will publish the English translation of a selection of his poems. Tonight at 7:30 p.m., Francesco Spagnolo and Sharon Bernstein will perform a conference/concert at Temple Sinai on the multicultural texture of Jewish music in the Italian Northwest. You are all invited to assist. I want to draw to a close with an exhortation by Primo Levi, which is also the inception of the novel If This Is a Man. You who live safe inside your snack houses, who returning home in the evening find warm food and friendly faces, ask yourself if this is a man who walks in mud, who knows no rest, who fights for half a loaf of bread, who dies at a yes or a no. Ask if this is a woman with no hair, no or name, with no strength to remember, vacant eyes and cold womb, like a frog in winter. Keep before you that this was. These words I dictate to you, inscribe them on your heart.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and especially for that beautiful poem you have just read to us. The works of Primo Levi are all available in English, and he is a wonderful novelist. It's well worth reading his books. But may I also mention that on the front of your program, one of the righteous featured on the far left is Maria Agnese Tribioli, and she was the head of a convent in Firenze in Florence, and sheltered many Jewish families as part of the move by many righteous people in Italy to save Jews during those times. And I would like to thank you again, Your Excellency, for the support which the Italian Embassy has given. Your reference to the International Holocaust Remembrance Association is very pertinent. The Jewish community in New Zealand would like their definition of anti-Semitism to be more widely known and adopted, in fact, by organizations, because it is an excellent scale against which to measure activities in our society. Our next speaker is Inge Wolf, who is the founding director of the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand and a stalwart of the Wellington Jewish community.
Thank you. Yes, very nice to go down. Honoured guests, especially those few survivors left amongst us. Today we remember those who were cruelly murdered in the Holocaust, the largest and most industrialised genocide the world has ever known. We remember especially the innocent children, in memory of whom we have just launched a travelling memorial, which I urge you to visit while it is at the National Library in Wellington. We are also remembering those righteous who, at great risk to their own lives and that of their families, harboured and hid Jewish people in an effort to save them from certain death. It did not always end well. The families of some of those righteous live amongst us, and I want you to tell you the story, never before told, of one such family who hid a young Jewish girl named Susie Goodsmith. Dirk Ubels and Janet J. Ubels Cruz lived with their 5 children in the countryside north of Amsterdam. Life was difficult enough for them anyway, but they agreed to shelter Susie and hid her in their attic by day, and she was only able to get out of her cramped quarters by night. However, one spring day she craved sunlight, and believing everyone to be at work, sat for a brief while among the vines in the garden. To her horror, she saw a neighbour glance over the fence and see her. Many questions followed as to her identity, and believing she was no longer safe there, she asked the family to find her somewhere else to hide. This was no easy task, but sanctuary was eventually found with another close relative, Jacob Cruz, in Amsterdam. Unbeknown to the rest of the family, Jacob was already involved in the resistance activities, but he undertook this extra risk in order to save Susie. Unfortunately, after 3 months, she was seen by a visiting church elder, who was subsequently rounded up by the Nazis for work camp in Germany. He was offered release in return for information about anyone harbouring Jews. So on the 23rd of November 1943, the house was raided and Jacob and Susie were arrested. The family never saw them again. Susie was transported to Camp Westerbork, and no one knows exactly how her short life ended. Jacob was held in the notorious Scheveningen prison, where in spite of being tortured, he did not give up any information about others he was involved with. In deteriorating health, he was moved around several prisons and eventually died on the 6th of October 1944, aged just 39. Dirk Ubels, who originally hid Susie, realized the Nazis were after him and fled into hiding. But in an unrelated roundup, the Nazis mistakenly identified his cousin, also called Dirk Ubels, and shot him at his front door with his young son in his arms. This tragic and difficult family history belongs to the designer of the moving Children's Holocaust Memorial, Matthias Sulje, and it informed his thoughtful and reverent design. I am grateful to him for his research and allowing me to tell you this story, always spoken about in sadness and with much survivor guilt among his family when they were together, but now with their agreement able to be recorded among the stories of the righteous that the Holocaust Centre holds. As Matthias himself has said, life, survival and relationships did become ever so much more complex. Most people face difficult moral and practical decisions. It can be seen that reality is more complex than a clear-cut good versus evil. Unfortunately, Matthias is not able to be with us today, but we salute him and his family, truly righteous then and now. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga, for that very moving story. We will now have prayers, a couple of prayers, and I'll ask the Rabbi of the Wellington Jewish Community Centre, Rabbi Ariel Tal, to recite El Maleh Rachamim, which is a memorial prayer for the dead used on remembrance days such as this one. And he will recite it in Hebrew and then give us an English translation. Would you like to come forward, Rabbi? Could you please stand for the prayer?
El Maleh Rachamim Shochen במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר, הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות חללי השואה 6 מיליונים שנטבחו, שנהרגו ושנשרפו ושנרצחו על קדושת השם בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. לכן בעל יחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויתרום מצורכם את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום משכבם. ונאמר Amen. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the souls of the 6 million Jews and all the others who were oppressed and were murdered and were burned at the hands of the Nazi Makshimam, who have gone to their world. May their resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore may the Master of Mercy shelter them in his shelter of his wings for eternity, and may he bind their souls in the bond of life. Hashem is their heritage, and may they repose in peace on their resting place. Now let us respond. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. And if you would kindly stay standing, I will ask Harvey Lifshitz from the Wellington Progressive Jewish Congregation to say the Kaddish memorial prayer, which is a traditional Jewish prayer for funerals and memorial services, but there is no reference in it to death. It's an affirmation of the greatness of the Maker of the universe, and it ends with a prayer for peace.
Yitkadav yitkadash shemay rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirotei v'yal michmal chitei, v'chayachon uv'yomachon uv'chayei kol beit Yisrael, v'hagalav izman karev v'imru, yesh mei rabbam v'rach l'lam v'almel mayad. Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar v'itramam v'itnaseh, v'itadar v'itale v'talal shmai d'kudashah brichu, leilam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma v'imru. Yesh lama rabba mishamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom b'imrumav, uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Thank you, Harvey. Please be seated. We now come to the closing part of this commemoration, which is the laying of stones on the Holocaust Memorial. And our first group are Holocaust survivors, Stephen Sedley, Rachel Kalkun, and Mary Mowbray. Unfortunately, Alex Schiff is not well enough to be here this afternoon. And with them we have some children from the Wellington Jewish community to provide a message of continuity of the Jewish people. Our next stone layers will be the Deputy Mayor of Wellington, Jewel Day, and Member of Parliament Nicola Willis, who is a National Party Member of Parliament living in the Wellington region. I will next ask Their Excellencies Itzhak Gerberg and Mr. Herr Tiedemann, ambassadors from Israel and Germany, to lay stones. Seeing the two ambassadors together reminded me that the relationship between modern Germany and Israel is a very strong one. In fact, Chancellor Angela Merkel has said, "Every German government and every German Chancellor before me were duty-bound to Germany's special historic responsibility for Israel's security." And the Wellington Jewish community has benefited in many ways over many years from the support from the German embassy. We see that Wellington Wind is having its input. Our next stone layers are His Excellencies Kwiatkowski, Ambassador from the Polish Republic, and Helen Smith, the British Deputy High Commissioner. And I would like to mention that the Polish citizens during the time of the Shoah were very supportive in many ways of the Jews living among them. More than a quarter of the 27,000 righteous among the nations are Polish citizens. And one of the righteous is Captain Frank Foley, who was the passport control officer at the British Embassy in Berlin. And through his efforts, more than 10,000 Jews were able to leave Germany during 1938 and 1939. Our next stone layers I will ask to come forward are Inga Wolf, Jeremy Smith, who is the chairman of the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand, and Lisbeth Blau, who is the daughter of her parents were or are righteous among the nations from the Netherlands. Our next stone layers will be Matthew Smith, who is the president of the Wellington Progressive Jewish Congregation, and Marlene Levine, who is the chair of the Wellington Jewish Community Centre. As mentioned earlier by Inga in her speech, unfortunately Matthijs Silje is not able to be here today because of a family event, and so the stone laid in his place, so to speak, will be laid by Xiaoling Wu from the Embassy of the Netherlands, together with Eileen Celestian, who is one of the Dexton children referred to by Jewel Day in her speech. So I will ask them to come forward. Just to show I should have brought my glasses, I will now ask Paul Hunt, who is Chief Commissioner of the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, recently arrived in New Zealand to take up that position, and Vicky Soanes, who is Secretary General of the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, to come forward and lay the stones. I'll now ask Tanya Torrea, who's Director for Public Affairs in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and today represents the interfaith movement in Wellington, and Rabbi Tal to each lay a stone. Just to show the dedication of the interfaith movement to events like this and similar events, Tanya has led a team of people from the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints to help the Holocaust Centre clean 1.5 million buttons, which are part of the Children's Holocaust Memorial that Inga referred to, which is on display at the National Library. Our last stone layers represent the new generation of New Zealanders, and they are the winners of the competition which was set up, endowed by a Holocaust survivor, Paul Seidemann, who is not well enough to be here today. He left the money, or no, he's still alive, he's still with us. He donated the money for an essay competition among secondary school students, and the prize winners will receive their prize later on this afternoon, but they are here now to also lay stones at the Holocaust Memorial. So I'll ask Georgia Wong and Mark Seddon to come forward, and they are from Dunedin and Auckland. Thank you, Georgia and Mark, and thanks to all the other stone layers as well. To conclude, I would just like to make a few remarks. Remembering and honouring the past, as we have done this afternoon, is an important part of improving the future, and I believe that we should always face the future with hope and optimism, not with pessimism. There is, however, a worrying side to Holocaust remembrance. As the length of time grows since the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau by the Soviet Army on the 27th of January 1945, the day remembered every year, we have seen anti-Semitism growing in North America, Europe and Scandinavia, and even Australia and our own country are recording more anti-Jewish attitudes and incidents. Are we forgetting the magnitude of horrors of the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews killed and the many other victims? Is the heartfelt cry of never again losing its forcefulness? Interviewed last year for the 25th anniversary of his Oscar-winning Holocaust film Schindler's List, soon after the mass killing of Jews in a Pittsburgh synagogue, Steven Spielberg had a warning about the rise of hateful ideologies. He said, "Hate leading to genocide is as possible today as it was during World War II. We have to take it more seriously today than I think we've had to take it in a generation." So we have to ask, or the Jewish community certainly asks, is Holocaust remembrance of dead Jews sufficient if it fails to link the lessons of those horrific times to living Jews today? But at the same time as asking that, we cherish the actions of the righteous among the nations who have been mentioned this afternoon as examples of how good people can inspire us to behave better. I hope you leave Makara and the commemoration that we've been part of this afternoon in a serious but not a sombre mood, and take with you the sincere expressions from our speakers. Personally, I will not forget Dame Susan Devoy's closing words at a previous commemoration on this spot. Hate starts small, but so too does hope. We now invite everyone here to come forward and place a stone at the Holocaust Memorial. I don't think we have a sufficient supply of children to accompany you, but you're very welcome to take part in the closing of the commemoration. Thank you again for coming. Good afternoon, ka kite ano tofa, and shalom.